Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Coming up today on The Story.
Relationships are God ordained, and that relationship for me with Nicole, or what we have now, has opened up capacity and stretched my comfort zones and done all those things that I think good relationships need to do. Challenged you.
And Aaron, personality balanced mine. Obviously, we've both got, some similar characteristics.
Fire.
We've both got passion and fire, and that can lead to some interesting moments, but it's never boring in our house.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colfax. Welcome to The Story. Well, today we're going to get to know a fun couple who love the Lord and are both involved in ministry, Aaron and Nic De Vincentis. We'll find out how they met and married, how Aaron feels about being used as a sermon illustration when Nic is preaching, and on a more serious note, they'll share about some severe health challenges Nic has gone through and how their faith has helped them on that journey. All that and more is coming up as Aaron and Nic have a chat with Eric Scatterbo in our Melbourne studios.
Aaron and Nic, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
How are you, Eric?
Real good. Glad to have you here. And we're going to find out how you met and married. But first, let's find out a little bit about both of your backgrounds. Aaron, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Where were you born and raised?
So born and bred in Lilydale, Melbourne, Australia. So big family, 5 brothers.
Italian family.
Italian father and British mother, Irish-English mother. So interesting household.
And how did you get along with your brothers growing up?
It was a very colourful experience.
What does that mean?
Well, typical sort of 4-bedroom house, but 3 bedrooms for 6 boys.
Wow.
So 2 a room, and just a lot of, to use an Australian word, action.
Action. Okay. I was going to ask. I had never heard
so
that
lots
one.
of sport, lots of holes in the walls. I remember my dad.
Holes in the walls? How did that happen?
Just wrestling and being
Roughhousing?
Rambunctious boys.
So that was life growing up?
That was life growing up. But good family, strong Christian foundation. Dad worked hard, mum raised hard, and it's good.
And when did you become a Christian?
So I was born and bred into the church, essentially. So my dad being very devout with all of us with church attendance. And I would say I had a pivotal point in my life around about 12, 13, where I committed formally to Christ and made that my path.
Okay, so born and raised in a Christian home?
Yeah.
Now let's turn to you, Nic. Let's find out about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I come from a smaller family. I just have one sister, 2 wonderful parents. My father is Catholic, raised Catholic, and so that was sort of our upbringing, quite nominal. We went to church on Easter Sunday and Christmas Day.
Would you say it was a quieter home than...
Much quieter, much quieter. I'm quite loud, and my mum's not Italian. My mum's she's got German parents, and my dad's Maltese. It comes from Maltese Italian background, but a lot quieter, and my dad is quite a reserved Italian man, I'd say.
I can see a potential conflict coming up, but we'll get to that a bit later.
Yes, I'm sure we will. So raised in a great, wonderful parents, great, loving, supportive, but so church and God was quite restricted to just, those days. But then I went to high school and I had a friend there who went to church, and she was a Christian, and she invited me along to youth group in year 8, and I went along and I thought, this is weird. What are they doing? Because my experience of church had been in the Catholic church, so quite formal and not at all like the church that she brought me to. And I didn't particularly like it. It sort of scared me and overwhelmed me. I ran out crying, and I said to her in the toilets, I'm never coming back here ever again.
You were crying?
I was crying. I think it was God really speaking to me, and it just overwhelmed me. And I don't think I was ready at that point. And so I left. I didn't go back, but God was knocking on my heart for the next few years, and I got to year 12, and I realised that as great a life as I had, and I had friends, and I was smart, but there was still a hole in my life, and I realised that hole was God missing in my life. And so I actually went back to the same youth group in year 12, and I didn't even wait for a salvation call. I just decided during the worship that I needed to give my life to Jesus, and so I did. And that was that, and the rest is history, I guess.
And then did you grow as a Christian after that?
I'd like to think I did. I continued to go to church and I got saved in the youth group, and quite quickly got involved in the youth ministry and became a leader in the youth
Oh,
group.
you went from...
Well, not immediately. Obviously, I spent some time just in church and getting involved in church, but it was quite quickly. I did dive in quite quickly into being involved because I just loved it so much. And so Aaron was a youth leader at the time, and that's where we got to know each other, I suppose.
Well, let's find out. Aaron, let's hear your side of the story.
So obviously Nicole came along and started being involved in the leadership of the youth ministry. I was a leader as well.
That doesn't surprise me that she would come into leadership.
No.
Based on her personality.
Yeah, agreed. So Nicole and I got to know each other quite organically through youth leadership, and our relationship built from there. And we had a couple.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
What attracted you to her?
Good question. Probably just her personality, extraordinarily bubbly, very confident, very upbeat, and obviously gorgeous.
Oh, that's
Oh, it's too
nice.
bad this is radio.
Yeah. So for me, and I was a young fella, 21, young. So for me, I hadn't had a lot of relationships previously. I just loved playing sport and going to church and doing that type of stuff as a young fella. So for me, it was all very new.
And by that stage, like sort of when we started getting to know each other, I was actually working for the church by then.
How did that come about?
It came about because my youth pastor at the time, Chris Blacker, so I was a leader, and I actually said to him, "Oh, Chris, I would love to volunteer one day in the office because I just loved youth and I loved being involved." And he actually said, well, not immediately, but he came back and said, let's hire you one day a week. And so actually, as a trial, as I guess an intern maybe. And so I started one day working with Chris Blacker in the youth ministry, and they obviously thought I was not bad because then they asked me to stay on, and it went from one day a week while I was at uni to then eventually I was there full time.
Wow. Now, obviously, you weren't raised in the church, so you didn't know kind of how you act, or it was all new to you.
I still don't know how to act.
Well, we'll get to that later. But yet, as your husband shared, you had this confidence. Where did that come from?
Oh, I don't know. Look, I'm a firstborn, so I was the eldest. I've got a younger sister. I think eldest children tend to be maybe a little bit more confident. That's not always the case. My mum is very confident as well. I always did public speaking in high school and was not bad at it. So I was just a type A personality, and it just transferred into the church, I suppose.
Just taking the bull.
Taking the bull by the horns? Is that what you're trying to say?
Taking the bull by the horns is what we're trying to say.
Nicole comes from a very safe, it's a very well-run environment in her household, and her parents are very good people, and they're very principle-orientated, and I think that would have contributed to
a lot of self-confidence.
A lot of self-confidence, and also genetically, like Nicole is very much like that whole Maltese side, which is very, very flamboyant and energetic, but also has the very cerebral type A personality that is her mother, that is very organised and diligent. So she's that nice little balance.
That's a nice way to put it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you become involved in the church?
Yes, so I was working at the church, and I remember on Mondays I was on reception, and Aaron's father runs a cleaning business, and Aaron was cleaning the church foyer, and he used to come down on a Monday, I remember this, and he used to spend a long time cleaning the foyer.
It used to take me about, it would be like a 20 square metre space that would take me an hour. It's ridiculous. So, I would
find excuses.
I would drag that out.
Oh, so you did this on purpose?
I would drag that out because if I dragged it out till 8:30 or something, Nicole would come to work.
Oh,
and she'd have to walk through the foyer.
Yeah, he was strategic.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see your strategy there.
Yeah. So that was how we kind of fostered the relationship.
And what did you think of this? Besides being very impressed by the shiny floor.
Yes, I was very impressed by the shiny floor. Look, Aaron, I'm 2 years older than Aaron, actually, and I'd had a couple of relationships, one in high school and then another one afterwards, and so they didn't work out. And both of those relationships, I knew that there needed to be more of a God influence, particularly because I wasn't raised in that. I didn't have the foundations.
Yeah.
And so I remember very clearly that when that relationship previously ended, I remember saying to a good friend, I said, I need to marry someone who's got good foundations, who's got strong foundations. I need a man who's been raised in the church in God, because I just knew that I needed that. And so along comes Aaron, and I thought, hang on, here's this guy and he's really nice and he's been raised in the church and I really liked his parents. And he was...
But he is a little slow with the mopping.
Look,
I was a little slow
He's
generally.
a lot slower back then than what he is now.
A lot's changed,
Yeah, a
yeah.
lot has changed.
Oh,
Yeah.
the confidence
Well,
given to him by a good woman.
Well, Eric, true. Because I was watching the carpet grow at that age. Like, really, and my dad and mum couldn't put a rocket up me because I was very much an underachiever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So there's some truth to that.
absolutely. Relationships are God ordained. And that relationship for me with Nicole, or what we have now, has opened up capacity and stretched my comfort zones and done all those things that I think good relationships need to do.
Yeah.
Challenged you.
Isn't that great how God does that?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
knows what you need.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he knows what you need to do.
And Aaron personality balanced mine. Obviously, we've both got, some similar characteristics.
Fire.
We've both got passion and fire, and that can lead to some interesting moments, but it's never boring in our house.
Okay. Well, we want to maybe get to some of that, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
But how did you become a couple then?
Yeah, so a lot of time spent together
Yeah.
haphazardly throughout those engagements where I was trying to hang around, and then obviously we're both serving in church and seeing each other at church and going on camps together and all these
Camps,
type of
yeah.
things.
Yep.
And then I think one day, typical sort of me, quite idealistic at that age as well, and not in a bad way. I think it was good. And I just sort of put my foot out there and said to Nicole, I love you.
Yeah, well, hang on. Have you missed a few steps?
I'm going from mopping to I love you? What?
No, but I'm expediting this because it was kind of like that though, wasn't
Well,
it?
remember-
Because you got quite turned off by it a little bit when I said that, weren't you? You were a bit
Well,
shocked.
hang on. Let's just backtrack a little bit.
backtrack here.
So I invited you to a soup kitchen. Do you remember?
Ah, true.
I have got friends who went to a different church and they served at a local soup kitchen.
Ah, yep.
And I invited Aaron along. What a great first date to, volunteer at a
serving
soup.
others. Beautiful.
Yeah, and so I think I actually made the first move in inviting him. Yeah, it was Croydon at the church near the station there. And when he came along and said yes, I sort of realised, okay,
No, wait. Were you starting to have feelings for him at that point?
oh yeah, this was me and my friend, concocting an idea about like, well, how can we move this along?
Did you know he was interested in you?
I suspected that the floor didn't take that long on a Monday, and it wasn't just the Monday morning. He would sort of come back throughout the day. So I did have the idea.
Okay.
I think he likes me.
I was working about 3 hours a day at that stage.
So we started to do things a bit more, as you do when we're courting. But I realised at that moment that he did fancy me.
Okay.
And so then it sort of got to a point, thinking back to the I love you moment, where we started talking about the fact that we liked each other, and he blurted out quite quickly, he loves me. And I was a bit taken back by that. But,
Yeah, that's what I'm referencing
Yeah.
to. That
Oh,
moment.
yeah, that moment.
So I was a bit vague, but yeah.
So we hadn't actually started going out at that point.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, he just went right to
Yeah.
I love you.
He did, yeah.
I wasn't tapping into a great wealth of experience here, Eric. I was trying to feel it out as I went along, And I remember when just to make a quick point here, when we did our pre-marriage counselling, you had to fill out a survey, and it gave you an indication of what your, not personality type was, but what your mindset was going into this marriage per se. And mine came back outrageously high on the idealistic scale.
Oh, okay. Well, there is a saying that women are shoppers and men are buyers. I think you said, yep, I'll take one of those.
Yeah, I'll take and one will do.
So, yeah, there you go.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Eric Scatterbo is chatting with Aaron and Nic De Vincentis, who are sharing their story as a couple. We just heard their backgrounds of how they met. Next, we'll hear more of their story and a little bit of Nic using Aaron as an illustration in a sermon. All that and more when we return.
The Story. If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Colfax, and this is The Story. We're continuing with Eric Scatterbo chatting with Aaron and Nic De Vincentis, who were sharing their story as a couple. Before the break, we heard about the beginning of their relationship. Now we'll hear more of their story, including some of the challenges they faced in the early years of marriage.
We dated for 2 and a bit years, and then we got married. I was at the age of 24. You were
26.
And this was in 2011.
Well done, sweetheart.
That's
Oh,
Eric.
wow.
Eric. That was impressive.
Yeah.
If you know me, that was good.
He's
I'm not a
not-
dates man.
No, he's not
Oh,
good with dates.
well, very good.
Thank you.
So the early years of marriage, I think that's what Eric's trying to get at.
And we do want to get to the sermon illustrations where
Okay.
you use
Sure.
Aaron.
Sure. Yeah, so at this point I am speaking a bit in church, and what greater content is there than your own husband, really?
And let me just say, for full disclosure here, that this is the church that I attend. So I've heard you,
Yes, you have.
over the years, and I've heard these sermon illustrations where poor Aaron is being used as an example. But you've given permission for all these, is that
Yeah,
right?
and Nicole is good enough to talk to me about her sermon content before she delivers
So
it.
you're not just sitting there, what?
No, I clear it. Make no mistake, I have censored. I have censored
Oh, you
sermons
have?
in
Yeah,
the past.
So I
Yeah.
haven't
Use
heard
that.
all of
Because
them.
to be honest with you, I'm actually a bit more private than Nicole.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you.
But I'm also well aware that it's really important to be real.
Yes.
And so
Well,
you
that
find
is
that
one
balance.
thing I will say, and it is so refreshing. You're being very, very real.
Yes.
Hey, let's just get to a very, very real example
Okay,
of you
sure.
sharing about yourselves, your relationship, and a bit about Aaron.
I can't wait to hear this. Aaron and I run a life group together on a Wednesday night at our house, and we had the first one for the year about a month ago, and we had everyone over for dinner, which we've done a few times, and we really like doing that. And we had hamburgers. I made hamburgers myself, made them from scratch. And I said to Aaron, after he got out of his tracksuit pants and before everyone came over, I said, Aaron, it would be really nice tonight if while everyone was eating, you complimented me on the hamburgers and told everyone how delicious you think they are. Now, Aaron hadn't tasted the hamburgers, so he had no idea what they were going to be like, but I said to him, you tell everyone they're good regardless. And obviously that's really embarrassing and that's really pathetic, and I'm quite well aware of this, but that's the real me. And I asked Aaron to do really stupid things like that. And Aaron actually said, yeah, all right, I'll do that. He probably wasn't listening, but anyway, I thought, great. We're going to have a really good night, and everyone's going to come to Life Group, and they're going to be really excited that we're the leaders, and they're going to think we're such a great, encouraging, loving, supportive couple that always complements each other. Anyway, we're sitting at the table eating, and most people have finished, and a few people have said, oh, Nicole, these hamburgers are really nice. And I'm like, thanks. But Aaron hadn't said anything yet, and we were sitting at opposite ends of the table, so I couldn't nudge him or kick him like I normally would to remind him. So I thought, I better just say something. So I said, Aaron, sweetheart, you've cooked these burgers so lovely, because he cooked them on the barbecue, thinking that'll trigger him to say, yes, but darling, the only reason I cooked them so well is because you made them so well. They're delicious. They're the best I've ever had. But he didn't say that. He just said, yeah, thanks, and kept talking to whoever he was talking to. So that didn't really go according to plan, and I was a bit annoyed, but we had a little talk about it after everyone left. And I realised that I was asking Aaron to be fake and to present an image that wasn't real. Oh, that's funny. I remember that.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Do you remember that, Aaron?
I do. Yeah, I remember that, and that was a common occurrence a couple of times, where there was what I would call leading the witness before people would arrive, because that was a confidence booster.
But it was all for a purpose. I mean, you used this as a sermon illustration. Do you remember what your point was?
My point was that we need to just be real, I think, and
Amen.
not force our spouses to give compliments when they're not really coming naturally, I suppose.
Yeah.
So actually, early on with the cooking side of things, because I'm a bit of a high achiever, I don't like doing a half-hearted job at things. I like doing things well. Even hamburgers, you can do them well. And so I remember early on when we got married, I said to Aaron, I want you to be honest. I said to him, I want you to be honest. When I cook something you don't like, tell me, because I don't want to cook it again if you don't like it.
At that stage, I should have recorded that and had that on a little press button that I could play back to her when I
But
did
you said.
Yeah.
Because there have been times where he said, well, I don't like this, and it's not gone down too well. But, that's...
So, in all seriousness, this was not the biggest conflict that one could have.
No, this was not the biggest conflict that we've had.
But you have used these real life moments to share, to be, real about biblical truths and things.
Well, I think everyone, I assume a lot of people go through similar situations. And it's good to talk about it, number one, to help people know that they're not alone, but also to bring it out into the open. And I like to talk about things. And so Jesus says, I'm the light. So bringing things into the light is a really good way to move forward and to work out how to deal with things in the future, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we worked out pretty fast that if you do meet a couple and they say they don't argue, that doesn't mean there's not a problem.
Yeah.
That just means that something isn't being said.
Exactly.
And I'm sure that there are varying degrees of that in every relationship, but we worked out pretty quickly that we are us. We're unique. Our relationship isn't to be compared to anyone else. But at the same time, we were doing a marriage course video series, and I forget the name of it. And I remember,
Love and Respect. Love and Respect,
Dr. Emerson, was it?
Something like that.
And he made this great point, which was every time you have, I'll use the word robust discussion.
You know what that's code for.
You're building credit in the bank with regards to growth, per se, and that's me paraphrasing it, but that's essentially the way I interpreted it.
Yeah.
Every time you are not being honest about something, and a lot of the time, let's be fair, they're first world problems. They're silly things. You don't argue about what house to buy, right? We don't. We argue about the dustbin. Or we would argue about the toilet, or we'd argue about the dog, or something like that.
Or the toilet seat, up or down.
Toilet seat,
Yeah.
And a lot of that came about, to sort of give you some context, was that I was brought up in an all-male household, except for my mother. I had 5 brothers.
Yeah.
It was chaos.
And Nicole, as a comparison, was really brought up in quite a female household, except for her father.
Very orderly.
And so
this was a culture clash waiting to happen.
Yeah,
100%.
and we never lived together previously. So obviously, it wasn't until we were married that we moved in together. And so that was a learning curve, bell curve, for us. And
just being in the same house together.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that produced a lot of content for Nicole.
And I got to hear it.
Yeah. And
Everyone benefited.
And we were learning.
Yeah.
We were learning, you don't do a course per se. You're going into this thing and you're in the deep end. And so we had a lot of these moments and these interactions, and Nicole ended up threading them through a lot of her sermons, and that's how we got to where we are. Yeah.
But I think going back to your point, you are going to have conflicts.
Of course you are.
It's about how you deal with those conflicts and how you resolve them. You have to
100%.
become good conflict resolvers to
Yes.
have a healthy marriage.
100%.
Because if somebody says, we have no conflicts in our marriage, that's not realistic. You're going to have conflicts if you're really wanting to have a good, close relationship. But how do you resolve those conflicts?
And I think for us, expectation has been a big thing in that sometimes I will assume that Aaron knows he should be doing this. And of course, men can't read minds, can they?
Yes, that is a big mistake.
And so I think I've realised that, and I think what works from both sides as well, is that we can't assume the other person knows what we want, when we want it, how we want it.
That is very
and
true.
that's been a really big thing for us, is to communicate our expectations rather than assume the other person knows them.
Now, have we answered the question, Aaron, how do you feel about being used as a sermon illustration from time to time?
It is what it is, and I'm happy to be part of that. I do feel privileged to a degree to be part of it sometimes. As I said, I do check it before it goes
Right. So
up.
you do have the right of refusal.
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's very respectful like that, and she knows where my boundaries are with regards to how much privacy I want and how much privacy I'm willing to forego for the sake of the sermon illustration.
In fact, sometimes we'll be talking about something and he'll actually stop mid-sentence and he goes, now, I don't want you to use this in a sermon.
I've had to
So
start
before
threading that through,
I even
yeah.
have an idea about it, he actually says to me...
He knows you.
Now, we're talking about something, he goes, now, you're not going to use this in a sermon, okay? And so I know that there are some things that are off limits, and that's fair enough.
Well, unfortunately, we've already run out of time for this
that's
first
quick.
time chatting with you, but will you come back again next time so we can hear more of your story?
We would love to, Eric.
Pleasure.
Well, that was part one of Eric Scatterbo chatting with Aaron and Nic De Vincentis. And it was great to hear the beginning of their story as a couple. I especially liked hearing the sermon illustration that Nic shared about the hamburgers. And I'm happy to say that we've collected some of the best bits from Nic's sermons when she shares about real-life situations with Aaron. And we're going to share these with you next time, so you'll not want to miss that. And yes, Aaron has given us permission to share these. Well, before we end today, I just want to say how refreshing it is to hear a couple share so openly and authentically about their lives and some light-hearted struggles they've faced. As Nic said, bringing these things into the light is a really good way to move forward. As Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Well, until next time, when we'll hear some of Nic's sermon illustrations and learn more about this fun couple, I'm Jimmy Colfax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
I asked Aaron one night last week to list all of my weaknesses for me. And it took him maybe, 1.5 seconds to come up with this list. Number 1, impatient. Yes. Number 2, control freak. Unfortunately, yes. Number 3, easily distracted. I refuted that one. I said, why do you think I'm easily distracted? He says, because you don't like to sew. I said, I don't like to sew because I'm impatient, not because I'm easily distracted. So he agreed, and that one was what from the list.
Nic De Vincentis is a youth pastor at Life Ministry Centre on the east side of Melbourne. Her husband Aaron is on the worship team and often provides real-life illustrations for Nic's sermons. We'll get to know more about this fun couple next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is connecting faith to life.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.